go to get all cleaned up and put away.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Friday. My name's Caleb, and we have a special guest joining us today, Miss Vanea. Hello.
Hi.
And don't mind me, I'm going to be looking back and forth from my two screens today because I'm going to be playing moderator here in our comment section. But welcome, Vanea. Thanks for tuning in, or joining us, rather. It's been a while. I think it's been, since maybe last summer since you were able to jump on with us?
Hopefully not that long, but yeah, I can't recall.
I don't even remember now.
Nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for the likes coming in right now. And like always, this is a live stream, so we'll give it a few minutes for people to find the stream. Today is going to be a fun one because Miss Vanea here, she is somebody who actually has quite a bit of knowledge on the topic of regional centers. So while we, before we have comments and questions come through, and before we jump into some of the stuff we want to share today, Vanea, do you want to? I know you've done this several times before, but do you want to introduce yourself and share to everybody a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from?
Absolutely. So like Caleb said, my name's Vanea Schmees, and I have been with Golf Advocacy for the last 4 years or so. Prior to that, I worked for one of California's regional centers for almost 9 years. I served in the adult unit at first and then down on the children's unit. So I've kind of been familiar with both of those from services later on in life to that, right as that transition from early start into Lanterman services at the third birthday.
Perfect.
My degree is also in special education, so that's kind of the other world that I've served.
Nice. Well, we do sometimes get some education questions here. I'd say a lot of them are going to be IHSS related and regional center related and Medi-Cal related, but good to know. Thank you, Miss Vanea, for taking a moment to share. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Again, you're welcome to drop a comment, ask a question. Again, a lot of today is going to be around regional center. So if there's anything regional center related you want to bring up, today is the day to do it because we got the expert herself with us. Penny is here. Good afternoon from Manteca in the house. And we do have Teresa in the comments. She's dropping and pinning some things for you guys. We have a link to the lanternman.org. I'm guessing it's for the master plan. So we're going to be going over a little bit on master plan discussion today, Vanea, right? As best we can.
Correct. And I sent some information over to Teresa. So I believe that's what she's posting. I just pulled up her posts and comments right now. So there's a couple links to some articles that explain, as well as a video. There's not a lot of information available. So this was kind of the best of what I found to summarize.
Perfect. All right. So the three things that I just pinned to the screen, everybody, you're welcome to go into the comment section and find those yourself and save those links and kind of peruse through them if you will. And like I said, if you have any questions, let us know. We'll be happy to address them. All right, Vanea. So one thing that we, as here at our office, seem to be getting quite a few questions about, and it's something I'm not super familiar with, so I'd love for you to help us educate as best as you can. The California, the master plan for, I want to say it's the master plan for developmental services and the updates that are coming with that in regards to regional center. Do you want to maybe tap into that and share with everybody a little bit about what that is and maybe some things they can expect to come in the future?
Absolutely. As far as to come in the future, that is a good question. The California's master plan was kind of put into discussion in early 2024. From that point, Governor Newsom had gone through, he put that this is what he wants to do. This was his plan for the year. And he created a group of, I believe it was 40 something individuals. They were handpicked by the California Health and Human Services Agency secretary. It was a group of individuals who had developmental disabilities themselves, family members, advocates, service providers, direct professionals, and then representatives from the regional center. So it was intended to be kind of a diverse group to get everyone's perspective. The master plan is not just about regional center. It's about all services for developmentally disabled in the state. So that's talking about how to improve the system overall when it comes to employment opportunities, education, transportation, regional center services, behavioral health, and the Medi-Cal program, I believe, is tied in there a little bit as well. So from those people that were picked, they created 5 work groups. So groups were around determining what are kind of the biggest 5 areas that we're seeing that people with developmental disabilities are having struggles with in the state. And so they split people up, and then they had, conversations around each of those areas. What are some suggestions and recommendations for the state as far as what they can do to improve the system? So that just came into the final master plan. They took the information from that year of meetings and that recommendations. They took 167 recommendations and put them into the master plan, which was released on March 28th. The master plan, I believe, is like 120 something pages long, and it's it's a lot of commentary. And there's not a ton of information out yet because it's relatively new. So, Teresa had said that there was quite a few people asking questions about it and, how that will affect. In all honesty, I'd be surprised if it really affects a lot right now. I watched a new video that just came out on it through ARCA the other day. And there's no set timeline as far as how long they have in order to implement this. However, there's reporting that's required for the next 10 years. So the kind of estimate on what the expectation is about 10 years. Some of the pieces are expected to go into place right away because they don't cost a lot and they're easy to implement, and others need money attached to them. And so therefore, until the budget allows for it, they can't go into place. The area made recommendations based on those 5 areas that they covered. Actually, they ended up going into a 6th area. But the plan's recommendations are around ensuring people are treated fairly, allowing people to make their own life choices, getting people the services they need, and getting them the ability to choose the services that they need, not just out of a small, bundle of things. Ensuring people are part of and served by a strong workforce, so that employment piece. Accountability and transparency in the systems. And then looking at data should guide the future of the developmental service system is kind of the final point. So taking that information and looking at how do we serve people better as time progresses. When I watched an interesting video, which I didn't link, it was about an hour and a half long, but it was from one of the first meetings when the master plan group got together. And so it was by one of the people that was chosen to be a part of the group, or sorry, 2 of the people that were chosen to be a part of the group. And they were talking about really what it looked like in those meetings, was talking about how difficult it can be for individuals in our state to get supports. In comparison, though, it's not, the grass isn't greener on the other side. California actually has a pretty good system in place as far as serving individuals with developmental disabilities. One of the points that was made is in some states, the wait list can be over 10 years long to get into a lot of these supports. So people, by the time they make it down the wait list, they've kind of aged out of the need for certain support. So our system is by far not perfect. However, it's better than a lot of systems. So I do want to make that point. But they were talking about how in one area of the state, you can get services more easily than another area of the state. Talking about how everyone wants to be the payer of last resort. And so, you contact the regional center and they say, oh, well, the, insurance is supposed to pay for that. Medi-Cal should pay for that. Or have you contacted the mental health provider? Or have you contacted the school? And everyone does pieces of everything, but not all of it. And so you have to be able to puzzle things together, and it's really confusing and overwhelming. I was, talking to somebody today, and it's like multiple family members have have needs and different disabilities, and trying to piece together the doctors here and which one did I take care of here, and this provider, and then the other child has other ones, and it's managing all of those can be really, really challenging. So a lot of this was talking about, is there a way to kind of streamline it where a family can choose who they want to access services through? Because at the end of the day, it all comes from the same pot of money. California and the federal government, depending on what it is, they put money into this bucket, and it's provided for services for developmentally disabled, but they choose who's allowed to use it for what purpose. And so instead of that, it's, how do you access this thing where if you need, let's say, speech therapy for your child, you can choose, do you want to get that through the school system, or do you want to get it, regional centers to support? Because at the end of the day, the money's still coming from the same place. So seeing if there's a way to kind of streamline it. The other couple areas that they were looking at was a little bit more when it came to mainstreaming the way that things are done in our state. I personally worked for one of the regional centers, and I remember when we put out a new system, maybe back in 2016, we put this new system into place to how to create our IPPs that we were doing, kind of our background system as far as our database went, and it was because person-centered was starting to become a bigger thing. And so all the regional centers were supposed to start writing their plans differently in order to make them more about the individual and less of a template where everyone looks the same and you just fill in the blanks. But our regional center did that, and so did, I believe, about 10 other regional centers. But then all the other regional centers picked completely different systems that they wanted to use in different ways of doing things. And so it wasn't a universal way to do things across because they're independent of each other. Purchase of service is kind of the same way, and I've talked about it a bit on here. Everyone has, for example, the ability to access a service called respite. That's the most common, that's pretty universal. It's basically somebody to watch, your child or adult child while you get a break if you're the primary caregiver. Every regional center in their purchase of service guidelines determines how you can access those services and how many hours you can get of those services, and what the criteria is to increase the number of hours that you get for that service. And they're very different. Orange County, I think, automatically gives people, it's 4 or 9 hours of respite a month. And then, up in, far northern regional center, it was starting at 90 hours a quarter, so 30 hours a month. And the criteria down in Orange County, it goes in increments of like 4 hours, and you have to do a whole bunch to justify the need for an additional 4 hours, and then you have to use all those hours, and then you have to have a whole new set of criteria to justify the need for another 4 hours instead of just a blanket, this is what I need and this is why. So part of the master plan is trying to make it more uniform across the state. So if you move from one area to the next, your services should be really similar, and your way of accessing things is similar. It would make it a lot less confusing too, because you get online and you start searching and trying to find somebody who understands what you're going through, but they live in a different part of the state, and how they did things is different than how you need to do things. So the idea of the plan, I like, but it's really long, and it's all recommendations for the most part. So I think time will tell how it actually plays out. But from what I've gathered from the research I've done, it might be a while.
Yeah, well, thank you for that thorough analysis, despite having kind of, it being still up in the open. I think that provided a lot more clarity for me, because this is something new for me. And so hopefully that provides some clarity for some people watching today too, who want to learn a little bit more about it. You definitely hit a couple of points too there at the end that are like very, very common, excuse me, common questions, concerns, and, frustrations that people share. Right. And a lot of that is the inconsistencies that you see throughout the state where maybe they're a part of one regional center up in Northern California, and then they move down to Southern California, totally different regional center, and they operate differently. They allocate things a little differently, right? They're confused as to why you have that service in the first place, because that's not really what they do here, right? And so I noticed here in the comment section, we do have a couple of comments we'll pull up where it actually kind of plays a role with hopefully what this master plan can help by making things a little bit more uniform so that there's a little bit less of those headaches. We do have a question from Barb here. What can be done if regional center is taking months since January to respond to an evaluation request? This friend's son's now 30 and has been denied 2 times while in school, first in elementary, then in high school, because he wasn't severe enough. Now he really needs support, and his parents need help with him because of his behaviors and lack of communication because of autism. Do you have any thoughts to share with Ms. Barb here?
Yeah, I mean, they're welcome to give me a call and we can do a consultation. If I'm reading that at face value, that's a really hard spot to be in. Regional centers, you have to meet criteria. You have to show that you met criteria before your 18th birthday. So that doesn't mean that you can't be 30 and still show that, but it's a lot harder because they can't just do a test today and determine that the level of autism that you have today meets the criteria for substantially disabling in those 3 areas, because they need to prove that you met criteria for that before you turned 18. When someone's been denied a couple times already, specifically when they were in those younger years, and then it looks like, I believe it said in high school, then they were pretty close to that 18-year-old mark the last time they were denied. And so even if at 30, now the needs are even higher or about the same, but you're expected to do more because you're older, and that doesn't matter in the sense that the criteria says what is significant is what happened before the 18th birthday. So it is a very challenging place to be in, and they're not the only people that find themselves in that spot. Absolutely. But the criteria is, you know, those 3 areas of substantial disability, which is the part where you said he wasn't severe enough. That's what they would be looking at. And before the 18th birthday.
Yeah, and you're definitely not alone on that. Barb, I think we see that often, very similar situation and circumstance. So yeah, give our office a call. Vanea mentioned that she'd be happy to chat with you to see if she could provide some counsel and some advice there. We'll go ahead and move on to...
I would prefer to speak with the family just because there's some questions that I'm going to need to ask that are pretty specific as far as what they provided. So if that's for a friend, if you could have the friend call our office, I'd be happy to speak with them. Good point.
Good point. We have Miss Rosario here. Can Regional Center help with getting a disabled placard for my son? He has profound autism, is an eloper, and gets extremely nervous in parking lots. And because of this, he has to use a wheelchair, and his doctor doesn't really want to sign that. Supposedly, they can't do that anymore unless there's a, unless they are physically unable to walk. That's something new to me. I haven't heard that one before, Vanea. Are you familiar with Regional Center playing a role much with advocating to get a placard?
I believe it has to be a medical provider.
Okay.
I am not familiar with that, no.
Yeah, in my experience, I have seen providers maybe have their own opinions on it, but I mean, I've seen people get ADA placards for things a lot less profound than profound autism. And so if I were you, Rosario, thank you for dropping that question. I would maybe ask for a referral to somebody else. I have a lot of families that I work with who get placards because they have a child who's an eloper. And that's gone back, many, many years to still to this day. It's something that I'll recommend for those who don't have that in place already. So maybe try speaking with another physician if you can, referring out to somebody else. But we wish you the best of luck on that, especially if it's needed.
Absolutely. And unless a rule changed, I would definitely talk to somebody else. My own nephew, my sister has one for their car for that exact reason. So I know that it has absolutely been approved for issues other than just mobility. But like I said, unless there's a new rule in place.
Yeah. All right. So we have Barb again. How do we get the POS for the regional centers? POS, is that
Purchase of service guidelines.
Oh, purchase
so
of
that's what I
service.
had referenced earlier. You can actually just Google it. Google the name of your regional center and type in purchase of service guidelines. You can find it that way. It's required, for them to have it available to the public. So it will be available if you just type in, like I said, your specific regional center. If you just type in purchase of service guidelines and regional center, you're going to be taken all over the place. So type in the name of your regional center because they are all different.
You got it. Thanks for the questions, Barb. We have Kathy here. Will there be any changes to the self-determination program? Now, Vanea, that is something that we have been hearing. I think Dakota might even mention that actually in one of our last lives in regards to some of the changes, budget cuts and things like that. But we have had some families mention that their regional centers have told them that there's going to be some changes to self-determination. There's going to be a little bit more of a stricter within the box guidelines coming out. Is that something, and again, that's all chatter. I haven't seen anything formally about that. Are you familiar with anything in particular?
I haven't seen anything. So if the chatter is happening and if it's coming from the representative at the regional center, but it hasn't come out yet, then I assume that's internal chatter. Since I don't currently work at the regional center, I wouldn't be privy to that. But I haven't. Anytime there's budget cuts, there's always the risk of that, but nothing that I'm aware of has been actually put out with a defined plan on that.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to know. So let us know in the comment section, everybody, if, excuse me, I'm sorry. Kathy, if you've been told that there's going to be any changes, or if anybody here has heard that specifically from their representative, let us know because we would love to look into that a little bit deeper. All right, Miss Linda, can the regional center send a provider, Eric's counselor, instead of my son receiving services from a district provider? My son is not happy with her. I'm a little confused by the question. Can they send a provider?
I'm assuming when you mean district, you mean the school is currently providing a counselor and you'd like the regional center to provide one instead. If you can clarify that, that would be helpful to answer your question.
Yeah, please, that'd be great. But thank you for being here, Linda. Diana, can a parent of an adult daughter be her personal assistant?
Yes.
Great. Do you want to maybe quickly tap into what a personal assistant is? Because every week we do get questions about what it is when we mention it.
Absolutely. And, Caleb, I know personal assistants, I believe you're pretty familiar with as well, from, your family and so on. So I know that's been shared, but with personal assistants, it really varies by age in particular. But for adults, it can be somebody that can help with anything they need assistance with. Also, community integration is where I see it approved most easily for, is when somebody needs to have an individual go out in the community for those social opportunities with them. You can get personal assistance for that. I've seen personal assistance for a student being able to attend college, but they have to have somebody, take them and attend with them, take their notes with them, those types of things. But it can be at home for assistance that you need as a person. Is kind of the background of that. I can send Teresa to post on one of the links information on personal assistance, kind of what it can be used for. It's a handbook from the regional centers. That's just kind of a general rule book. You can look on your personal regional centers POS guideline, but it at least gives you kind of a breakdown of types of things that personal assistance can be used for. So it can kind of broaden your idea of, oh, maybe I do need help in this area too, and I could justify it this way. I've always found that if you can understand the purpose of a service and what the law is behind it, and you can even Google that, personal assistance regional center, laws. It oftentimes pulls up a Disability Rights California article if you Google something like that. And they're great because they give, regular terms to explain things. They summarize everything, and then they attach the codes for the law. And so then you can, copy and paste that law.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Vanea. Vanea, if you can hear us, you cut out there for a moment. Oh, Vanea, can you hear us? Vanea, you might have to log back in. Let's see here. Vanea, we've gone radio silence on you. All right. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. Not too sure where she went. But she's still logged on here. So Vanea, if you can hear me. Oh, she just logged out. Okay. So sorry. She'll log back in and we'll bring her back on to the stage. Sorry about that. But yes, personal assistant is a great option, Diana. It sounds like you have some experience with yourself. Anybody of your choosing can be that personal assistant. So my own family has used my siblings to help my other siblings and neighbors to be the personal assistants. So yeah, you can absolutely get creative with it. All right, so I'll go through a couple of questions while I can until we get Miss Vanea back on. Teresa, you're welcome to check on Vanea, make sure she's all right. She still got the link, so she should be able to log right back in. Charles, do we have to prove the need for more respite hours for my daughter? How do I ask for more hours? Yes, so this is something that Vanea actually has talked about in the past and brought it up briefly here. Oh, we got her back. Hang on, Vanea. Welcome back.
Thank you. I put my phone system on Do Not Disturb because apparently that kicks me out. I apologize about that.
No worries, no worries. Well, we were just wrapping up on Diana here. I was jumping into Cheryl's question. Did you have any other points to make on Diana's personal assistant question?
I think the final point I was just saying is understanding what the purpose of a service is and what the criteria of it is. You know, as far as the definition of what's allowed within the law, but also going to that purchase of service guideline and understanding what your regional center says is used to justify it. That's going to help you in all services be more effective. When you can use the language of the law or use the language from the purchase of service guidelines, then you know the criteria that they have to match it against in order to say yes. And so your yes is going to come a lot easier if you just do a little bit of background work.
Fair enough, fair enough. And you did say that you'd send Teresa some information. So Teresa, if you don't mind, if you have any information already, just to post it, pin it in the comments about personal assistance, that would be awesome. All right, so Cheryl, Cheryl, excuse me. So this is something, Vanea, you tapped into briefly a minute ago, as well as something in a previous live that you did, asking for more respite. So we do have a lot of families who say, hey, I get 10 hours a month, but it's not enough. And when I've asked regional center, they say, oh, you don't have room for it, or we can't do it right now, or hey, can you show us why you need more respite? Do you want to tap into maybe helping Cheryl's here kind of understand the expectations of, you know, generally speaking, and then also the fact that regional centers do operate a little differently per office, right? So what's kind of some of the ins and outs of respite?
Absolutely. So respite services, I kind of briefed on a little bit of it earlier that they can be very different from regional center to regional center. So respite is the first one that I go to purchase of service guideline and see what does your regional center say. If they're generic where it says we give this many and then if you need more, you know, let us know your justification, that usually says that there's a lot of wiggle room. Or if it just says in general, if you need more, here are the areas that we would allow more for. And a lot of times that, you know, that the individual had an increase in their need, that became so substantial that you need more of a break. It can be that you have other kids in the home that you need to attend things for, and maybe the individual you're talking about isn't able to go out to your other child's softball game or soccer game because it's too overstimulating. And so now it's soccer season and you need to be able to attend those events more frequently, but you need someone to stay with that child who has the regional center support so you can go for your other child. It can be that you have a health issue that's going on and so you have appointments or you need more rest or you whatnot. Those are all justifications when you ask for, you know, larger amounts of hours. But you don't have to give, for most regional centers, a massive explanation if it's a smaller number of hours. You know, I'm just getting worn out and I need more of a break to take care of myself or to go on a date with my husband or, you know, to do these things for myself. I have appointments, I have this and that, whatever it is. You just have to justify why you need a break, but it's going to be based on your regional center's purchase of service criteria. So I highly recommend that you go in and you look at that in order to make sure your language lines up with what it is that they say you need to show.
And Vanea, when she says proves, so is that normal jargon or verbiage that you hear from regional center? Like, do they usually flat out say, "Hey, you got to prove that you need it more"?
No, you have to justify
Okay.
it, but
Okay.
not prove. So, for example, they can't ask for your medical records. So, if you say, I have these medical troubles going on, and therefore, I get tired easier, I have to go to a lot of doctors, or I have this, they can't ask to see your records. You're not an individual that is a part of the regional center your child is. So only things pertaining to the child, they may require those in order to justify the need for a service, but not your own personal records. So no, I wouldn't say prove, but justify.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, and Charles, if that's kind of the vibe that they're given, like if they're like basically not offering anything unless you provide proof. Now that I think about it, I have had people that I've worked with who their caseworker did make it kind of seem in that way. We can provide some tips on that, some advice. You're welcome to call our office and connect with Vanea. We can definitely try and help you out if there is room for more respite.
Absolutely. And if you've had trouble, if you're getting a no, if you're not currently a client of us, there is a small fee to it, but I do these a lot, and so it doesn't take a huge amount of time. I would do a phone call with you and kind of get information on what the justification is, and I can put together a letter justifying why the need for an increase. That's been fairly successful to get families who were having a difficult time an increase.
Great. Thank you, Vanea. Sherry, what is the criteria for personal assistance? I requested a PA twice for my 23-year-old daughter with CP who requires 24/7 care and have been denied with SDRC.
Okay, San Diego. Twice for 23. So it just kind of depends on what the services and supports are she's already getting. I would assume, or are they denying it altogether? It gets, which I actually think I didn't touch back on, and you had mentioned earlier, Caleb, is there can be the area where they start asking you to show a calendar when an individual has a lot of services or a lot of appointments. So if you have IHSS hours that you're getting, if your child goes to a day program during, every day, if they have some kind of community integration at nighttime, if they, already have respite hours that cover the weekends, things like that, then that's where they start asking you, actually, that would be the time to use the word prove. That would be the time where you have to be able to prove that you're not using all the hours in the day already with services that are being funded. And it doesn't have to be funded by the regional center. All services count in that area. So, if there is a program that she's going to unrelated to the regional center, but she's still being served somewhere else, unless you're asking for personal assistance because she wants to access that and she can't access it without somebody to attend with her, that you could ask for personal assistance for. But unless it's that case, that's going to block off that period of time. So, IHSS takes up a good amount of the hours that you have. Day programs take up a good amount of hours of the day. Respite's an easier service to get and can be used somewhat similarly, not similar in everything, but and respite takes up a certain number of hours. So really looking at, is that why they denied, or were they saying, personal assistance isn't available to her at all? The reason for the denial, which hopefully they did put in writing because they are required to give you a NOPA when they deny something, a notice of proposed action. But if it wasn't for any of those reasons, and you have lots of hours that are available that she isn't already being cared for by someone, or someone's not being paid to care for her, then I can, if you've tried it a couple times, I can help you moving forward if you want to give us a call. But I am going to have Teresa post that purchase of service information. It's technically was created by one regional center, but it outlines the general use and the purpose for all regional centers. So I would recommend looking at that and making sure that what you are asking for fit within that criteria. Because I also have seen where families ask for a service, but they use language that's unrelated to that service, and therefore it's denied because what they were asking wasn't actually personal assistance.
Well said. And I think you might have given me this tip a while back too in regards to that last point you made. So when you come across services like personal assistant or respite, like, yes, you can always come to your regional center, your caseworker, and ask for that. But if they say, well, we can't offer XYZ because you don't meet the criteria for it, then present them with the challenge that you have. Present them with the concern that you have and say, okay, well, if this service doesn't meet it, then do you have a service that does help me with this solution? So maybe you might confuse respite with a personal assistant or another service that regional center might be offering. So it's always good to just be really open with your caseworker as best as you can and present a challenge that you are facing and see if they do have a solution or a service that matches the need there, right? But thank you, Sherry, for the comment. And thank you, Vanea, for going through that and clarifying that. Ms. Vanessa, I have 3 children who are diagnosed with autism, and the doctor filled out the paperwork for the plate card. Okay, cool. So it sounds like, Vanessa, you got an ADA placard for all 3 of them. Let us know. And Christy, what is a personal assistant and what type of client services this is? Can a parent be that person? So we did briefly tap on that. Christy, let us know if you're listening. Sorry, I just came across your comment now. I know you've been waiting for a few minutes.
I think she's, and when you're talking about personal assistance, just to be clear though, as well, if it's a child you're talking about personal assistance for, it is significantly more complicated to get. So adults are different. They do everything based on age. So if, with an adult, if you need somebody to take care of your needs, if you need someone to go in the community with you, then that is solely based on your developmental disability, because someone who is typically developing, who is an adult, would be able to do those things on their own. And so therefore there is a need directly related to your developmental disability. If you have a child, specifically a child that is not yet a teenager, so up to about 12, and they need assistance, because they can't be left alone out in the community, or they need, reminders every once in a while for this or that. Those things they're going to say are parent responsibility, because in essence, you chose to have children, and all children would need some support in those areas at that age. And so it's comparing to the age. So personal assistance takes a lot of the role that a parent would typically do. And so therefore, for those younger years where that is parent responsibility, it doesn't count towards personal assistance. They're looking at what's extreme and significantly above and beyond when you're looking at children.
Well said once again, Vanea. Christy, hopefully that answers your question. So if you have more on that, please let us know. We'll try and get to it. Christy did ask another question. What is an ILS worker? How does that work? So we do have a lot of people that I work with who have had experience with ILS. Do you want to break that down a little bit, Vanea?
Yeah, I love ILS services. When I was in college getting my degree, I worked full-time as well, and I worked for an ILS agency. It's independent living skills is what you're teaching, but the idea with ILS services is it's for an adult with a developmental disability through the regional center who is able to live independently. So an apartment, rent a room, something like that. And they need support with some areas of independent living. ILS services is specific to teaching and training. So you're not going in like you would with an IHSS worker or even a supported living service staff, which is SLS. You're not going in and doing the tasks for them. You're teaching them along the way. So you're sitting down, if it's paperwork, you're sitting down with their paperwork, talking them through, how do you find the important information? What goes here? Let's fill this out together so that you can learn how to do it for yourself so you can then go independent. You're helping create systems. When your mail comes, here's how you sort it. so that you don't miss any of the important things. You're teaching basic cooking skills. So if somebody's living on their own, they might not be able to make, a huge fancy dinner, but you could probably teach them some simple, like one pot stirring meals, or if they can't use a stove safely, things that you could make in the microwave, or you can combine things that are relatively healthy. You can even go grocery shopping and work on those skills, like how do you make a grocery shopping list? Let's put a system in place so when you're getting low on milk, you write it on the board on your fridge, things like that. So cooking, cleaning, medical, all of those things, and helping somebody be able to learn those skills to do them on their own. That being said, some individuals will always need an ILS staff for some number of hours because they won't be able to do those tasks completely on their own. But the purpose is to really give more independence to individuals that are close to being able to live independently, and to also give an extra set of eyes that are coming in, weekly or so on, to make sure nobody's in there, taking advantage and sleeping in their house or taking their money or whatnot. It gives somebody in the home to see what's going on. SLS services, supported living services, functions a little bit more like IHSS, where somebody can go into the home and do the tasks for the individual. So they can go in and they can clean for you. They can cook your meals for you. They can, fill out that paperwork for you. And so the purpose is a little bit different.
Love it. Yes. If you have an adult who has the capacity for independent living and you want that extra support, that is exactly it. That was very well said, Vanea. Thank you.
And to specify, though, real quick, ILS and SLS services, you have to be able to have your own place. So the regional center doesn't pay for your home. So whether that's through, the HUD system and getting financial assistance to be able to afford your own apartment, they don't pay for the apartment, they pay for the staff. When you're looking at a residential facility where you aren't independent, they do subsidize the amount that goes into that system. You just pay a portion of your Social Security for most individuals, but the housing is partially covered. But when you are living independently, you are required to pay for the fee for that housing like anyone else would who is living independently.
Good point. Absolutely. All right. Ms. Garcia, if my kids receive IHSS hours, can I apply for regional center, or what's the difference? I'm a bit lost. Well, you're definitely not alone. Again, these programs are confusing. They're confusing, especially if you're new to California, or if this is like your first real hands-on experience with special needs, raising a child. They are two different things. So, IHSS, and Vanea, you're welcome to jump in if you'd like. IHSS, that is a benefit through Medi-Cal. So that's something that we have here in California that can essentially pay you or pay somebody else to be the caregiver of this individual who has a disability. So Regional Center is a nonprofit here in California that can cater to a lot of other things that can be beneficial to this child thriving into adulthood. And it comes with different services. It is separate from Medi-Cal. It's separate from IHSS. So they can be the child or the adult can have both services. That is the best way to go about it if you can. If they qualify for both, might as well pursue both. There's not really much of a negative on having either program. And so if your child or your loved one qualifies for Regional Center, you should definitely pursue it because it can be a big help. There are the hurdles of the long wait periods, of course, but again, like Vanea mentioned earlier, California is going to be so far superior than any other state when it comes to similar programs like Regional Center. Other states have their own versions of these programs, and I think it might even be called Regional Center in certain states. I could be wrong. I know there is IHSS technically in other states. But yes, I would most certainly pursue both if you think your child or your loved one can qualify for both.
Yeah, and California is one of the only places where it is based on if you qualify, you get it. It isn't through the Medi-Cal system. And so a lot of states, their services for developmentally disabled are through their welfare or Medi-Cal systems. And so if you make too much, you don't get it. You're required to fund for it on your own. California is, I believe they call it an entitlement state, but if you qualify, you get it. If your parents, are millionaires, or if your parents, can barely pay their bills, it doesn't matter. If you qualify, you qualify. So if you don't have Medi-Cal, there's, occasionally a small fee attached if you're assessed for it, although I think they're starting to do away with that. One of them they already did. But it's minimal, like a couple $100s a year was what it was. So pretty much in the state, all services are, free for everyone as long as you meet criteria.
Understood. Thank you, Vanea. Teresa said, I'm only finding purchase of services as statistical data or specific to regional centers. Can you point me to the purchase of services information you wanted me to link here? Okay, are you able to point to that real quick?
So I have some things saved on my computer. I was trying to pull them up at the same time, but it's too hard to follow the two things. So Teresa, I will send it to you in just a moment when we sign off so that you can post it. Anyone who wants that information, just come back in about 10 minutes after we sign off and it'll be there.
You got it. How can Barb get a hold of you, Vanea?
Just call our office. I work for Galt Advocacy. So you can call our front desk and get a hold of me that way. I believe that Lori's extension, if you'd like to call directly to the gal who schedules for me, Lori, I believe her extension is 119. I'm checking on that for you. Her extension is 100, I believe. Oh, it's just putting you to the front desk, I guess. But oh, yep. No, I apologize. 119. So if you want to call our office, 707-566-7600. If you need to get on my schedule, dial extension 119, and Lori would be happy to get you on.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanea. We have a couple of questions we're just kind of swim through because then I believe you're joining Nicole at 1 o'clock, right?
Correct.
Perfect. We'll go through a few more minutes. I'm guessing Nicole might be a little late, just so that you can have a little bit of a break because we've been on for almost an hour now. Linda, can you help regarding education? I'm an advocate desperately.
You can absolutely call, same number that we just talked about, to speak with Lori to get on my calendar. I'm a bit more available in the summer since the schools are pretty much closed, so I'm not doing as much work directly with the school right now. But giving you advice, reviewing records, things like that, absolutely. I give a lot of information in the consult. If you're not a client right now, we do charge a $95 consultation fee. But if you send me your records, I can review them while we're talking on the phone. I can give you pieces of advice, and then you can kind of see as far as moving forward if you want to hire an advocate. So yeah, that would be the best way to get some information. I love to educate people as well so that you can, do your own advocacy in a lot of these areas. So I'll provide you all the information that I can while we speak as well.
Perfect. We have a couple more here. VR regional center is good, but it depends. My respite doesn't allow me to leave because he's medically complex too. We have nursing, but cannot staff. I think that's.
So it sounds like your child qualifies for nursing respite, which in that case you would be able to leave. However, it sounds like you can't find a nurse to be the respite provider. Therefore, with a typical provider, you're not allowed to leave. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And it depends on what it is, but a typical respite provider can't do medications if they're needed. So things like individuals that might have a seizure and have to be administered, an emergency medication that can come into place. Insulin, unless something changed, wasn't allowed to be provided. So even if it's unrelated to the disability that the regional center serves, it's still something that would be medically necessary during the time that they're with your child. So depending on the reason, that doesn't surprise me, and I don't think that there's a workaround. You can talk to the regional center about if you post an ad and find your own provider, that can they set them up as an employee of records. You would just need to get more information on what the regional center will pay that individual in order to post the rate. Unless you're in self-determination, in that case, you can kind of create what the going rate is right now and have that pulled from your budget.
Wonderful. Fanny's last question here, and then we'll let you go. Thanks for all the information. I'm a provider for my daughter with developmental delays. I have full protective supervision with IHSS. Can I qualify for a personal assistant for my daughter? So that kind of goes in line with some of the things that Vanea had shared earlier, right? It's going to depend on your room and the schedule. It's going to depend on the need itself. So, excuse me, I would start by asking your caseworker. Ask them if you have need for it, see if they can fit it in there. If they say no, or if you have more questions on that, I'd say give our office a call and maybe Vanea can help you out.
Yeah, and just general rule real quick for everyone. If you have multiple providers and or services and you're looking to do that, go on Google and print a blank week calendar by the hour, and you can just fill out that area. They're in school from 8:30 to 3. So put a line from there and write school. You know, we use IHSS for these hours. This is the hours they're in therapy. And then you have a visual to see what hours do I have left, because that's what I can use, or I can ask for. But also you can physically give that to the regional center, and that will solve the problem of the justification as far as, are there enough hours left? Most regional centers at that point, when you're asking for additional services, will give you a blank calendar. So you might as well just do it first.
Perfect. Okay, we have one more good one from Amanda here. How long can recreational services be provided through regional center?
I'm not sure about how long. There's not a timeline as far as you can only get 2 months worth of it or 6 months worth of it. I believe most regional centers are using a maximum of $600 a month, which is quite a bit for social recreational services. So I don't know as far as the question in particular, if that's what you were meaning is, can you only use it for a certain amount of time? But there isn't, unless something changed, there isn't a rule around that. And I'm pretty familiar with the rules on social recreational services. That's only been around, again, for the last few years. And I think it's fantastic. But as far as time goes, I don't believe there is.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Vanea. We're just about there. I think there was a couple of questions we missed. Sorry, everybody. We'll try and come back into the comment section, but we're out of time. We got to let Vanea take a quick break so that she can jump on with Nicole. So, Vanea, you're just going to stay in this room. I'll pull you off of the stage here, and you could just, like block your camera if you want to take a quick break, but you don't have to go anywhere. I think Nicole's going to use this room here.
Right. Sounds good. It was a pleasure speaking with everyone. I will right now be sending over those links as far as personal assistance goes. And, so feel free to reach out if you have any further questions, but expect that in the next couple minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanea. Well, thank you so much for all your awesome regional center knowledge and information, and just knowledge in general. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today and dropping your comments and your questions. Feel free to give the video a share if you can, or a like. That also really helps push this out to people who are looking for this information. But if you need to get in contact with us, call our office. You can get on Vanea's calendar. You can get on my calendar as well. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. Thanks again, Vanea.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.